Welcome to the channel, English Epics. It didn't make the newspapers that it wasn't a topic on any talk show, but just in case you missed it, my world started to explode on February 10th of last year. That Saturday, I picked up the mail and brought it home. That we live in a rural community where all mail is collected at the post office. Once home, I sat at my desk, sorted the bills, wrote out checks, and reconciled everything with our checkbook. Normally, that's something Julia, my wife, takes care of. She says it makes her feel rich. But right now, she was at her sister's house for their monthly 3-day visit, so I decided to handle the routine task myself. One bill seemed a little high, so I reviewed the charges to see if we'd purchased something I'd forgotten about. The only charge that stood out was for a hotel room in the same town where her sister lives. Her sister and her husband live in a large 4-bedroom home. They don't have children. One of the bedrooms is set up as a guest room. Staying at a hotel simply didn't make sense. That I reviewed the bills again carefully and noticed that every other month for the past year, there was a charge for a hotel room that I called the hotel. I told them I had noticed a charge on my account and needed to verify some information from their records. They told me that according to their records, I had stayed in room 1228, always the same one. Check-in was listed at 8:45 p.m., with an automatic checkout the following day. That I thanked them and hung up. Why would she stay at a hotel? Why would she check in under my name? Why hadn't she mentioned spending nearly $200 on a hotel room? Why such a nice hotel, when a cheaper place would have provided a bed just the same? Especially if she was supposedly spending most of her time with her sister. I decided to grab dinner at the sports bar next door. That I remember there was a game playing on the big screen, but I couldn't have told you who was playing, or who won. That I left around 9, and called Maureen at home. Maureen is Julia's sister. When she answered, I asked to speak with Julia. Maureen said she was in the shower and would call me back in a few minutes. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Caller ID showed it was Julia's mobile. I answered, "Hi, honey. Sorry, I was in the shower when you called. How are you doing?" "I'm good. Just wanted to check in and see how things are going with you and Maureen." "We're doing just great. Tomorrow we're going shopping." "Well, don't spend this into poverty, honestly. I just wanted to hear your voice. I miss you." "Oh, sweetheart, I miss you too. Sleep well. I'll see you Sunday evening. Good night. I love you." Something about that call felt off. On Sunday evening, she came home and was warm and friendly. She had bought some new clothes while shopping with her sister, and a few of the items she said were for me. She knows I've always thought turquoise looks great on her skin. She showed me a new turquoise teddy she picked out. I liked it. It was lacy and fit her body beautifully. Julia, like her sister, had a figure, one that still looked like it could fit into the cheerleading uniform she wore in high school. Neither of the women had children, and neither struggled with the weight issues that often follow childbirth. Julia had worn a size 6 dress since high school. In the turquoise teddy, she managed to stir a strong reaction from me. She pampered me the entire evening, and by 9 o'clock we were in bed. While we were kissing and getting close, she asked if we could be a little more adventurous. I asked if she wanted to start on top or underneath. She said she preferred to begin on top and finish below. I lay on my back, and she climbed on top of me. She kept the teddy on but let me undo the small fasteners. She had taken time to prepare herself that day, and everything felt incredibly smooth. As we got more intimate, I noticed something slightly different, and she asked if I liked the new scent she had used. I told her I preferred her natural self. She was focused, tender, and incredibly attentive, as if we had all the time in the world. I responded in kind, making sure she felt as cherished as I did. Our connection grew deeper with every passing moment, and before long, we were completely in sync. At one point, I gently shifted our positions, letting the moment guide us. She whispered my name and held on tightly as we moved together. The intensity built until I felt her shiver and heard her soft moans, clear signs of her pleasure. She looked up at me with warmth in her eyes and said, "Pete, stay close." I leaned in again, and she murmured something that sounded like, "Thank you." It was hard to tell through her smile, but I understood what she meant. Soon after, we both reached that quiet moment where words weren't needed that we settled into. Our usual embrace, wrapped around each other, safe and still. Julia didn't take off the teddy right away, so I asked softly, "Sweetheart, take it off. I want to feel your skin next to mine." She sat up, and I helped her take off the teddy. When she lay back down, I noticed a small, round bruise on her chest that was less than a centimeter in size, roughly halfway between her and her armpit. Wow. What happened? Honestly, nothing serious. I bumped into a clothes rack at the store. My fault. I wasn't watching where I was going. "Want me to kiss it?" I asked. It was just an excuse to spend a little time kissing the chest I adored. She had always said yes when I asked to play with her that way. "No, it doesn't hurt. Let's just go to sleep." She turned on her side and switched off the bedside lamp. I was stunned. It was the first time she'd ever refused breast play since we got married. After so many years of unconditional yes, this felt strange. I fell asleep wondering what the hell was going on. As it happened, not long after that, my boss was asked to send a technician to Salinas, the town where Maureen and her husband Mike lived. I was selected for the trip. I told Julia I had to go out of town for 3 days, but I said I'd be in Fresno. She knew I'd be away for work, so the best way to reach me would be via mobile phone. After arriving in Salinas, I checked in at the job site, prepared everything I needed for the next morning, and then checked into a hotel. I chose a different one, not the one Julia usually stayed at. From my mobile phone, I called Mike at work. "Mike, it's Pete. How are you doing?" "I'm good. How about you?" "I don't think you've ever called me at work before. I'm planning a surprise party for Julia, and I also want to do something special for Maureen. Can we meet and talk about it?" I passed through Salinas this afternoon and thought it might be a good time if you can get away. "You're already here?" "Yep. Name the place, and I'll buy you a beer." He gave me the name and address of a place, a sports bar. Half an hour later, he walked in. I had taken a booth as far from the big screen TV as I could. 2 glasses and a pitcher of beer were already on the table. "Good to see you, Mike. Good to see you too." We talked about how wonderful our wives were and how surprised they would be if we threw them a party. The date I had chosen didn't coincide with a birthday or an anniversary. I needed the names and addresses of their friends so I could send out invitations. I asked him to email them to my work address. Then I asked him how their last visit had gone. On Saturday, they spent the whole day at a spa, and on Sunday morning we went out for breakfast. They had a great time. I pretty much give them space when Julia's here. "Do you think I let Julia visit you too often?" "No. Once every 2 months is fine. She's a great lady, and we always have a good time when she's here." "Good. I wouldn't want her to be a burden to you. Not at all." Then our conversation shifted to sports, politics, and our shared mother-in-law. We spent about 90 minutes together, and then I left. The next day, I resolved the client's issue and finished work by noon. By 5:30 p.m., I was nearly home. I called the house, and Julia picked up on the 3rd ring. I told her I'd be home by the time she got back from work the next day. She seemed happy that I was returning so soon. The call ended, and I drove into our neighborhood. At 6:30, Julia came out and got into her car. She was wearing a short black dress, black tights, and heels. Not her usual outfit. With me, she was mostly a jeans and western shirt kind of woman. She was carrying a small bag that looked like a gym bag. It went into the trunk. I followed her to a quiet restaurant in a nearby town. She parked behind the building and went in through the back door. I circled around and found a spot where I could see the restaurant through the large front windows. She was sitting at a small table for 2 with a man about my age, skin tone, and build. I didn't know him. They talked throughout the entire meal, holding hands across the table, and he paid the bill. Then they walked out together through the front door, her arm linked with his. They got into a silver Lexus, drove 2 blocks to a hotel, and stopped. I watched them walk from the parking lot to the hotel entrance. His hand rested possessively on her lower back as they walked. I wanted to charge at them, destroy him, and drag her home by the hair. I wanted to rip off his manhood and slowly choke her with it. I felt my blood pressure spike, my ability to think rationally vanish, and the urge to act become so strong that I slammed the steering wheel hard enough to worry I might have broken my hand. I watched as the valet parked their car. I noted the license plate and wrote it down. Julia spent the night at the hotel. I stayed nearby, at a Motel 6. I got up, got dressed, drove across town, and had breakfast somewhere I could keep an eye on the Lexus. At 7:40 they came out, wearing the same clothes they had on when they went in. They got into the Lexus and drove back to the restaurant. She kissed him, got out of the car, and opened the trunk of her own vehicle as he drove off. I was out of her line of sight and able to watch as she stood behind her car and took off her heels, tights, and dress. She wasn't wearing a bra. She put on a Western-style shirt, slipped off her panties, and pulled on a pair of jeans. She sat on the bumper and put on socks and boots. She walked over to the restaurant's dumpster and threw the panties away. Then, she returned to her car, closed the trunk, got in, and drove off. She was heading home. At 10 o'clock, she returned to town wearing jeans and a different Western-style shirt. Jeans are jeans, so I couldn't tell if she had changed them or not. I followed her, and she walked into the family planning center. An hour later, she came out in tears. She got into her car and cried for quite a while. To me, it made sense. It looked like she had just found out she was pregnant. I had a vasectomy when I was 18. There are some unpleasant genetic issues in my family, and I sought medical advice about it at that age. Before we got married, I told Julia I couldn't be a father. I also had medical tests done to confirm it with absolute certainty. We had never used protection, no pills, no contraceptives of any kind. Now she was caught. She drove home. I went to work, turned in some paperwork, and then headed home as well. Julia was sitting at the table, looking like she'd just been crying. When I asked what was wrong, she said she just wasn't feeling well. I sent her to bed, told her to drink plenty of water, and even tucked her in, just like a good husband should. I spent 2 hours at the computer before I came up with a plan. First, I needed proof. I drove to the nearest pharmacy and bought 2 pregnancy tests. Second, I needed to know who her lover was. I found a way to obtain the registration information for the Lexus. So, his name was Paul Dom, and I had his address. I also noted that the car was registered to Paul and Margaret Dom. While Julia slept, I thought and planned. Was Paul the same man she had met in Salinas? How would I find that out? I'd have to wait for her next trip to her sister. She would likely use that trip as a cover for an abortion. I figured she might postpone the visit for a couple of weeks. If she did, I'd be ready. I picked up the phone to make a call and heard Julia talking on the other line. I need to see him one more time. Book the clinic appointment for Saturday, and I'll stay with him Friday night. God, Julia, you've really gotten yourself into trouble. What if Pete finds out you're pregnant? By Saturday evening, there won't be anything to find out. After that, what he doesn't know won't hurt anyone. All right, I'll book the appointment. Are you going to call Carl, or should I do it myself? You call him. I don't want the call to show. Up on my bill. Friday evening, room 1228, 8:30. I hope you know what you're doing. I hung up the phone after the sisters. There were at least 2 men involved, Carl and Paul. Why? What difference would that answer make? When I heard her get up and go to the bathroom, I went in, just to check on her. I told her I would sleep in the guest room so I wouldn't catch anything and she could get proper rest. She nodded and climbed back into bed. My plans were in place. Refining them took most of the night and several hours the next day. Considering the circumstances, I actually slept fairly well. The nagging question, why, kept creeping into my thoughts, and when I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of someone else having sex with her. I woke up angry. In the morning, we both went to work, and she called me during lunch. My sister called. This weekend we've been invited to a baby shower for her friend. Do you mind if I go? Of course not. Our agreement allows for 1 weekend a month. If you want to take too close together, it just means I'll keep you home a little, longer before the next trip. Are you sure you're up for it? I'm feeling better today. By Friday, I'll be fine. Good. I'll see you at home. On Friday morning, I kissed her goodbye and went to work. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well, and by noon, I was allowed to leave. By 6, I was in Salinas, watching as Maureen dropped Julia off at a street corner. Julia was wearing a sexy blue dress and high heels. A man was waiting for her in front of the hotel. He took her hands and kissed her, then turned, placed his hand on her backside, and led her inside. I slept in my car, or rather dozed off. The next morning at 6:40, her lover came out, picked up his Buick from the lot, and drove away. I now had his license plate number. A few minutes later, Julia came out and walked to the intersection where Maureen had dropped her off the night before. Her sister picked her up and drove straight to the family planning center. They went inside. When they came out a few hours later, my car was parked next to Maureen's, on the far side of the exit, so they would reach me before seeing either me or my vehicle. Maureen was walking beside Julia, supporting her gently. I stepped out and stood, directly in front of them, blocking the path to Maureen's car. "Oh, damn," Maureen said when she saw me. Julia looked up and burst into tears. I'm sorry," she kept repeating over and over. I put them both in the back seat of my car. Maureen didn't want to get in, but after I gave her a light slap, she stopped resisting. We left her car in the parking lot of the family planning center. I headed south. About an hour later, Maureen asked, "Where are we going?" "Give me your purses," I demanded, ignoring the question. Maureen handed them over. I took out their cell phones and removed the batteries. I tossed the batteries out the window along the way. A few miles later, I threw out one phone. 20 miles after that, I threw out the other. "Pete, please, where are we going?" "You're both going home. My home is in Salinas, and we're heading south out of Salinas." I handed the sisters a bottle of water. "Drink. You need to stay hydrated." They took a few sips, and a few miles later I gave them sandwiches I had bought in town. They ate them. Julia was starting to recover from the anesthesia. She said again, "I'm so sorry." Her voice was weak. "Not that your answer will change the outcome. But I'd like to know why, Julia." "Why?" "I was bored. I didn't love him. I just wanted a bit of excitement in my life." "I love you. Which one don't you love? Paul? Or are you talking about Carl? Maybe Mike?" I asked. Maureen turned to her sister, shocked, and asked, "You slept with Mike?" "No, I would never do that. That's messed up." "But sleeping with Carl and Paul was okay," I said. There was a long pause. "No. Being with them was thrilling. It made me feel alive. I never wanted you to find out. You're like a rock, steady, strong, and reliable. I depend on you. I like being married to you. You give me safety and strength." But they made me feel something different. As she said this, she began to cry. "So, you like feeling like an adulteress? You're such a stupid adulteress you even paid for your own hotel room." For a while, silence settled in the car. "Why am I here, Pete?" Maureen asked. "I believe there's a legal term for this, accomplice. You helped her sleep with other men. According to Pete's law, You might as well have handed her someone else's body. You're just as guilty as she is, so you'll face the same consequences. I need to use the bathroom, Maureen said. We were still north of Los Angeles, so I turned off I-5 onto a rural road. When we were about half a mile from the highway, I said, "Stick your rear end out the window." I'm not stopping. Pete, I have to go to the bathroom too, Julia said, and I won't be able to lean out the window. I hit the control button, locking the doors, pulled over to the curb, and got out of the car. From the trunk, I pulled 4 pieces of rope. They were meant for the future, but now would be a good place to start using them. I pushed the button to unlock the car doors and opened the one next to Maureen. I wrapped the rope around her neck, then held another one out to her. Tie your sister up so that her hands are under her legs and she can't get free. Maureen did so. Tie the end of the rope around her neck. Not tight, but enough so she can't get off. She did as I asked. I helped Maureen out of the car and slammed the door, to which the rope from Julia's neck was tied. I pushed the button and locked the doors. I led Maureen to the edge of the road and said, "Do what you wanted. Just pull up my skirt in front of you and do it. Go ahead and do it." She looked at me fiercely and pulled up her skirt. She pulled her white panties down to her knees and squatted down. With another fierce look at me, she let out a spurt. When it stopped, she stood up and adjusted her clothes. I led her back to the car. "If you do something stupid like try to run away, I won't chase you right away. I'll kill your sister, and then I'll catch up with you. I'll take you back to your car and you can continue your ride next to your sister's dead body. Do you understand? Me? Yes. But you won't kill her. You still love her. Are you willing to bet her and your life on it?" I opened the door, untied Julia's hands, and let Maureen help her out of the car. Maureen helped her to the curb and did the same without falling. They immediately walked back to the car and got in. I returned the 4 ropes to the trunk. When I closed the doors and started the car, Julia asked, "Are we really going home?" "You weren't listening, adulteress. I said you 2 were going home. I didn't say I was going home. I can tell you this, when you wake up tomorrow, you'll be in your new home. You're not going to like it very much." Actually, I was heading to Oxnard, a city with a large commercial harbor. I planned to arrive there at dusk. On the way, I stopped, or rather, slowed, down at a gas station and bought some food for the 3 of us. I purchased 2 drinks. The sisters could share 1 cup. When I was inserting the straw into their drink, I dropped in 3 pills. 3 pills that would put both of them to sleep in about an hour. I made them eat half of their food before letting them drink. I watched as they both drank. By the time we had driven another 30 minutes, the cup was empty. In Ventura, they were asleep, leaning against each other. I reached back and shook them, but neither of them woke up. I smiled. I drove straight to the docks in Oxnard and found the large fishing boat I needed. 2 men from the vessel came over and helped the drowsy women onto the boat and down below deck. Once inside, we placed each of them in their own bunk. The men left me alone for a few minutes. I checked on both of them, curious and anxious, still unsure if they were fully unconscious or simply asleep. For years, I had wondered about Maureen, what she was hiding, what secrets lay behind her guarded eyes. Of the 2 sisters, she always seemed more confident, more composed. Now she seemed vulnerable. I made sure she wouldn't be able to move freely. She was lying on her back, with enough room to shift slightly, but not enough to get up. A rope connected the bunk's headboard to a metal loop on the floor, wrapping lightly around her neck and then back down to another anchor point. Her arms and legs were unbound, but positioned in a way that kept her from reaching the knots. I restrained Julia in the same way. It took some effort. Afterward, I removed their rings and other pieces of jewelry. Then I went up on deck and allowed the men to go below to inspect how everything had been arranged. When they came back up, one of them was fastening his jeans. I could guess what they had been up to, though I didn't ask. They thanked me and handed me the payment, $4,000 for the two of them. I went back below deck for a final look and to collect their clothes. Both women had begun to stir. I gathered their clothing into a bundle and waited. Julia was the first to open her eyes. She looked around, confused, and asked, "Where are we?" "You're in transit, on your way to your new home. I realized I was wrong about one thing I told you. I said you'd be there by morning when you woke up. It'll actually be closer to 4 days from now. Your new home is in another country. They paid a good amount for both of you, so I'm sure you'll be treated well, at least until they've made back their investment. You thought you could do whatever you wanted behind my back, even go as far as to make life-changing decisions without telling me. You thought there would be no consequences for breaking the promises you made. Maureen must have believed the same. Now you'll have time to explain to her just how much it cost to be such a devoted sister. No, Pete, you can't be serious. This is too much for me. I'd rather die. Maybe not today, but very soon. I bet you will," I replied. I stood up, climbed to the upper deck, and left. On my way out of Oxnard, I stopped and stuffed the women's clothes into a donation drop box. That evening, Mike called me. He hadn't seen either of the women since parting with Maureen after breakfast. I asked why he hadn't seen Julia at breakfast. He hesitated, then said Julia hadn't spent the night at their place. "Do you know where she stayed?" "No. Maureen knows. She drove her somewhere. So, Julia's car is at your place." "Yes, but Maureen's car isn't. Maybe you should call the police. They could start looking for them and for Maureen's car. And Mike, keep me updated, okay? Now I'm worried. What the hell could they have done? I'll call you as soon as I hear anything." "Thanks. Call me on my cell." The police found Maureen's car 4 days later, parked exactly where she had left it, in the lot of the Family Planning Center. Inside, on a scrap of paper written in Maureen's handwriting, it said that Julia was scheduled for an abortion. No one remembered seeing either of them enter or leave the clinic, but there was a record confirming that Julia had undergone the procedure. She had paid in cash. During the first month, Mike and I spoke quite often. I had driven to Salinas and returned Julia's car to her home. For 6 months, I alternated, driving her car one week and mine the next, creating the illusion that I was taking care of it for her while she was missing. They were never found. After 6 months, I was sent on a business trip to Chicago. I took a small package with me. I spent 2 days in Chicago for work and stayed through the weekend. I borrowed a company car and drove to Wisconsin to mail the package. Inside the package were 4 rings, last worn by Maureen and Julia. I had never touched the box, the wrapping paper inside, or the mailing label without wearing gloves. 4 days later, Mike called me. He said he had received a package from Madison, Wisconsin, containing Maureen's and Julia's rings. He finally broke down and admitted he knew Julia had been visiting them to start an affair. The women never told him who it was, but he suspected Julia had been cheating on me. When he received the rings, he realized Maureen must have been unfaithful too. A month later, the police contacted both of us and informed us that they were closing the case. There was no evidence that the women had been kidnapped or killed. In fact, there was clear evidence that Julia had been involved in at least 2 affairs, and that Maureen had helped her. The police took the rings as evidence, but later returned them to Mike and me. I sold Julia's car. All of her clothes and personal belongings were donated to Goodwill. Mike is now dating a woman who has 2 children. We talk from time to time, and he's considering marrying her. He loves kids and hates living alone in his big house. He also believes this woman won't cheat on him. Her ex had cheated on her, and she was deeply hurt by it. Paul's wife received a call from a man claiming to be with the police